What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to my subscribers, and if you're new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about 5 major things you want to focus on when you're trying to create those very lush, very successful food plots in the woods, what we have to do to prepare the soil and the area and everything for them. And so the reason why you really need to do this is because these wooded food plots in the big woods can get so easily browsed down to absolutely nothing because there's no other really high quality food sources in the area. So we need to make sure that these food plots are as lush and as thick and as much tonnage of food in them as possible so that they can support that heavy browse in the woods and you're not just buzzed down to a bare patch of dirt come hunting season. So let's get into it. So the first thing we need to focus on is the site selection. And so I'm going to jump ahead to the other points in this video. You might want to watch the video, come back to this point to fully understand it. But what you're going to want to do is pick a site that isn't going to require a ton of work. And so we're going to get into like opening the canopy, getting sunlight down to that food plot, screening that food plot, stuff like that. But if you can select a site that already has some of that going for you, you will have less work in these next steps. So just come back to this point after you've seen the rest of the points in this video. So what I did this past weekend is I actually did put in a new food plot site in the North Woods in northwestern Wisconsin in the big woods on my property up there. Now, we also opened up canopy and helped those other plots do exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video. And this is something that I just work on year after year. You know, the trees grow, they get bigger. And so you got to continually keep improving these to make sure they're putting as much food in the woods as possible. But first of all is site selection. So I had in my mind that I wanted to put in sort of like a snake-shaped food plot, but the topography of the area just did not allow for that. So what I ended up doing instead was putting in a food plot that's down in like a valley. So there is topography on both sides that completely screen this food plot. And you know I always talk about screening my food plots on this channel. But on the other side is also topography, and the whole food plot kind of gently comes downhill. Now the problem is at the bottom there I have an opening in topography, so that's an area I'm wanting to screen. And what I did was when I cleared the food plot, I put my brush pile down there to just initially have some sort of barrier down there visually and physically, just to kind of keep those edges of the food plot easily seen by the deer so that they stay on the food plot, they follow those edges. I've made videos about how deer love edge, but just site selection in general. You want an area that maybe is screened by topography. It's naturally screened by being in a thicker part of the woods. You maybe don't have a lot of big trees to cut down, especially those really big like white pines or something that would just be a huge mess to try to take care of and clear out. And then we definitely want to keep in mind where this is in relation to our other attractions on our property, how this works all together with our overall habitat goal on our property. So let's get into number 2. Now this is where the work starts. So first of all, you're going to need to clear the site that the food plot itself is going to be. So this means cutting down any trees that are in there, any brush. It also means you're going to want to spray that food plot. You're going to want to get ,rid of that natural vegetation in that area. I would recommend using glyphosate and 2,4-D. Glyphosate's 2 quarts per acre, and 2,4-D is 1 pint per acre. That's going to get rid of all your grasses and all your broadleaves in that area. Now, if you're in a really big, dense canopy part of the woods, you might not have a lot of undergrowth, but you're going to want to at least try to get all of that old thatch and those old leaves and sticks and everything off of that site so you can have as much exposed soil as you can. So something like a leaf blower does work very well here to try to blow all of that stuff off of the food plot site. You can take a metal rake out there to get at just as much stuff off of that plot as you can. You really want as much exposed soil as you can get. Now I know that no-till is very, very popular right now, but I don't do 100% no-till, especially in a brand new food plot. What I like to do is use a cultivator, and I will show you guys the cultivator I use, and I'll link it down in the description if you guys want to go check that out. It is just a small one that gets pulled behind a four-wheeler, so you can easily get it into these wooded areas. And all I do is sort of just let it bounce along the top of the soil. I don't want it actually churning up inches and inches of soil. So it does have a built-in mechanism that allows you to like attach a cinder block to the top of it to put more weight on it and get it to press down into the soil more. But I don't want that. I only want it to just agitate that very, very top layer of soil, because like I said, I put this food plot into like a valley. So what I'm taking advantage of there is, over the years, the erosion has taken the nice soil from those hills and put it down into the bottom of that valley where I'm going to plant that food plot. But I don't want to go in there and like till or disc or plow and like rip up inches and inches, and if not feet of dirt, to bring all of that bad soil to the surface and then bury all of that nice dead organic matter that was on the top down into the soil. So I'm only trying to agitate that very top layer, just get a little bit of air in it, just so I can get better seed to soil contact coming up when we plant. So this is definitely something you guys want to do. You could also use a drag harrow. I do not, but that would also be a good use here in this situation as well. I also have a four-wheeler that has off-road tires on it, so just those tires themselves do a good job at tearing up that top layer of soil. So the other thing, though, when we're talking about site preparation here is, in addition to cutting down the trees and stuff that are on the food plot itself, you want to look south, put your arms up in like a 45-degree angle, and cut down any of that high canopy that's up there. So you want as much sun as much of the day as you can get. And the way you're going to achieve this is taking out those high canopy trees to get as much sunlight down to the soil as you can. And this is something I just went up and did this past weekend on all of my food plots. I got even more sunlight down to all of them by cutting down some more of those big mature trees, getting them down on the ground, getting that canopy open, and it put a ton of sunlight down on my food plots, which is what you need to get the biggest, lushest, greenest, most tonnage of food plot in the woods, so that it doesn't get browsed down to nothing. All right, so number 3, let's get into seed selection and planting. So in a big woods setting, our biggest issue is browse. So as much as I would love to plant my favorite food plot blend in the big woods, we just cannot. It gets browsed down too easily, and it's just not going to work. So what we need to do is focus on using a cereal grain that is not killed by the deer when they nip it off. So I love planting beans, peas, and brassicas in my food plots, but when they're very young, the deer will nip them off and completely kill them, and they won't keep growing. But when you plant something like a cereal grain, when they nip it off, it's almost just like grass that they keep that like lawn mowed for you, and it keeps growing back. So in heavy browse areas, something like a cereal grain, and especially in the Northwoods, we're going to focus on winter rye grain, not grass, because of the temperature difference. But if you're further south, you can get away with using the other cereal grains, and they'll do just as well for you. So when we're planting winter rye, what we can do is either just throw down a lot of grain right away at the start and let the deer just hopefully keep it under control. This is something you guys are going to have to keep an eye on in your specific area, what browse pressure you're getting, what the size of your deer herd is. And of course, this can change year to year too. The idea of putting in food plots is we're going to build a bigger, healthier deer herd along the way. So we always need to make adjustments year to year. So when we plant winter rye, if you only want to plant one time, I would recommend planting as heavy as 200 pounds per acre. Now that can be really, really heavy. That's going to be a lot of grain down there. But if you aren't aware of what your browse pressure is going to be, if you can't get back to your food plots for a while, for like example, mine are probably about 5.5 hours from where I live. So it is a ways away. I can't get up there all the time. This is a strategy that you can employ. Now, the better option, if you have the time to do it, is to throw down 100 pounds of winter rye grain, and then 3 weeks later, throw down another 100 pounds, and then 3 weeks later, throw down another 100 pounds. So what this would look like is we could start planting in like mid to late August, hit it up again in September, and then hit it up again like late September, early October. And I realize that that's like after bow opener in Wisconsin here, but it's okay to get in there and just keep that new growth coming up in the food plot. So the idea here is that when you plant that first planting, it's going to grow up, it's going to get mature, and you throw in that second planting so you have that nice young second wave coming in, and then of course you have that third nice young wave coming in. Now again, just watch your browse pressure, because if the deer keep browsing it down, meaning that there is nothing growing to maturity, you don't really need to be doing this. So like I said, you're just gonna have to keep an eye on this and kind of do what's best for your specific situation. And now when it comes to actually planting it, I literally just reach into the bag, throw it out with my hand. That's just a skill I've acquired over years of doing this. Now, you could use just a broadcast spreader. It's probably the best way to get a nice even spread, but you don't need to go out and buy one of those. Throwing it down with your hand. Since we're just broadcast spreading, this doesn't need to be perfect. You just want to make sure you're getting the entire plot covered in seed so that you don't have any bald spots coming up. We're maximizing that tonnage on that food plot. And of course, you always want to try to plant seed before a rain so that that gets wet right away. This stuff will germinate within a week, and it will germinate even in poor soils. Like, this stuff will grow in the bed of your truck if it gets wet. So it is very easy to start to get it established. But if we do want to get this very lush and thick, we do need it to be in very good soil, very good seed to soil contact, and also be in front of a rain so that it starts to germinate right away and you don't have things like turkeys or raccoons or whatever come in and pick through all of your seed before it gets a chance to start growing. All right, so number 4, we're going to get into fertilization and weed control. So first of all, just make sure you get that soil test and you get your soil right, get that pH right, get that fertilizer in there up front when you're preparing the seed bed. But once the winter rye starts growing, what you can do is fertilize it with a nitrogen fertilizer just to give it that extra boost, keep it going. And now the other thing is going to be weed control. So the issue is that you could have other weeds growing with your winter rye. Now, you can spray 2,4-D on your winter rye once it is, I would say, at least 6 to 8 inches long. Do not do it when it's smaller than that because you could risk hurting it. Now, there is research that spraying 2,4-D on winter rye does stunt its maximum potential for growth. But if it's already being stunted from its max potential because it's being outcompeted by broadleaves in there, I think the chemical use maybe just balances that out. So it's your call if you want to use chemicals or not. Typically, I've never run into this issue. I usually seed so thick, this stuff grows so fast that it just outcompetes everything in the food plot anyway, and you don't need to worry about this. But I'm just throwing this bit in here just in case you do run into this issue. That is an option in the tool bag for you. So number 5 is to monitor this and make adjustments year to year. I highly recommend keeping a journal or something to keep track of what you do year to year so that you can adjust year to year. Also monitor it. Put a trail cam out there. Put an exclusion area, meaning put a fence up around a part of your food plot so you can see how much it grew in comparison to how much got browsed down by the deer outside of that exclusion area. And just adjust year to year. So you guys will see what's happening on your food plot. You can make decisions for the future that can make it better for you the next year. And so if you guys are keeping this journal, yeah, you can do it old school pen and paper, but you might lose that. For those of you that don't know, Google owns YouTube, and Google has a free feature called Google Docs. You get 15 gigabytes of free space on there, and they have everything on there from like Word docs to spreadsheets to everything else that you would ever get out of like paying for the Microsoft license, but it's for free and you get 15 gigs. So it's a great place that I like to store all of my information because then I can access it from any device that has internet access. And just a great place to keep notes. So all right, guys, this is really all it takes. We just got to get as much sun into these plots as possible, get that soil right, and we got to pray for rain, get as much water in there that'll keep them growing. And then we just need to monitor this year to year, make sure that everything is going according to plan, and just make adjustments year to year. Like I said, I was up there making adjustments already this year, getting even more sunlight down into those plots, and it should prove to be even better this year than it was the year before. The last thing I do want to add to this is that if your plots still are getting browsed down to nothing, you have to consider adding additional acres of food plots, which was one of the reasons why I put another one in this year, is just to put more food in the woods, give them more food, they'll eat it, but it makes it less likely that they're going to browse it all the way down to the dirt, and you should have a healthy stand of a food plot going into the hunting season this year. And if you guys have done this before and you have something to add to this video, please leave a comment down below so we can continue to help this community out. Everybody has different experiences with doing this, and the more we can add to it, the better off we'll all be. So if you guys feel like you got some value out of this video, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're really going to enjoy this one. So go check that out, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.